No one in 77 years of NASCAR Cup Series racing had ever done what Tyler Reddick just did. Not Richard Petty, not Dale Earnhardt, not Jimmy Johnson, not a single driver in the long storied history of the sport's premier division had ever won the first 3 races of a season. And yet, on the first day of March in 2026, at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, Reddick crossed the finish line ahead of one of the most dominant road course racers in modern NASCAR history, and a record that seemed untouchable quietly fell. What makes this moment even more remarkable is who stands behind it. Not just a driver who went winless the entire previous season, but a team co-owned by Michael Jordan, a team that barely a year ago was locked in a federal courtroom fighting for its right to even exist. To understand the gravity of what is unfolding in 2026, you have to go back. You have to trace the arc of 23XI racing from its earliest days, when the idea of a basketball legend co-owning a competitive Cup Series team was met with skepticism across the garage. Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin launched 23XI Racing in 2020, with Bubba Wallace behind the wheel of the number 23 Toyota for the team's debut at the 2021 Daytona 500. In those early seasons, the operation was finding its footing. Wallace delivered the team's first win at Talladega Superspeedway in October of 2021, a victory that also made him the first black driver to win a Cup race since Wendell Scott in 1963. It was a landmark moment for the team and for the sport, but consistent front-running results were still being built piece by piece. Then came Tyler Reddick. When he joined 23XI Racing, the trajectory began to shift in measurable ways. In 2024, Reddick won 3 Cup races, clinched the regular season championship by just 1 point at Darlington, and drove the team to its first-ever championship 4 appearance at Phoenix. For the first time, a team co-owned by Michael Jordan was competing for the sport's ultimate prize. They didn't win the championship that November, but the infrastructure, the chemistry between Reddick and crew chief Billy Scott, and the organizational depth Hamlin had built were becoming undeniable. What followed in 2025, though, looked like a setback. Reddick went the entire 36-race season without a single victory. On the surface, it appeared that the momentum had stalled, but underneath the results, the data told a different story. Reddick still posted one of the stronger average finishes among playoff qualifying drivers. He completed more laps than anyone in the field. He recorded 7 or more top 5 finishes. He was, by several underlying metrics, one of the most consistent drivers in the garage. The win simply didn't come. In a sport built on razor-thin margins, where tire degradation over a single fuel run, a fraction of a second lost on pit road, or a poorly timed caution flag can swing a result from 1st to 15th, a winless season does not always reflect the true performance of a car or a driver. Analysts who followed 23XI closely understood that the speed was there. What was missing was the convergence of execution and opportunity on any single afternoon. Meanwhile, off the track, the team was waging an entirely different kind of battle. In 2024, 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports filed a federal antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR, alleging monopolistic control over team operations through the sport's charter system. The case went to trial and drew national attention, putting the sport's internal economics under a spotlight that few casual fans had ever seen. At stake were questions of franchise permanence, revenue distribution, and whether teams had the structural stability to invest long-term in competition. The settlement came in December of 2025. 23XI and Front Row received their combined 6 charters back for the 2026 season, with charters for all teams becoming permanent. The agreement was widely considered a significant legal victory that reshaped the financial architecture of Cup Series team ownership. For 23XI, it removed the existential uncertainty that had lingered for months and allowed the entire organization to focus entirely on racing. And the racing that followed has been nothing short of historic. It started at Daytona. The 2026 Daytona 500, the most prestigious event on the NASCAR calendar, unfolded in characteristically chaotic fashion. 37 of the race's 41 cars were officially involved in crashes over the course of 200 laps on the high-banked superspeedway. The attrition was staggering. What separated Reddick from the rest was survival and timing. He led only the final lap of the race, threading through the carnage with the composure of a driver who understood that at Daytona, patience is its own form of aggression. It was 23XI's first ever Daytona 500 victory, and Jordan, who was in attendance, celebrated with the crew on pit road. A week later, at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Reddick won again under circumstances that would have broken most drivers. A crash with fewer than 50 laps remaining ripped away the entire right front fender of his number 45 Toyota. Aerodynamically, that kind of damage is severe. It alters airflow over the body, changes the balance of the car at speed, and typically costs a driver significant lap time. Reddick fought through it, regained position, and took the lead from his own teammate Bubba Wallace, with just 2 laps remaining before a green-white checkered finish. It was the kind of gritty, resourceful victory that spoke to both driver skill and crew chief strategy. Billy Scott's calls throughout the race kept Reddick in contention even when the car was visibly compromised. Then came Austin. The Circuit of the Americas is a purpose-built Formula One facility, a road course that demands an entirely different skill set from the oval tracks that dominate NASCAR's schedule. Braking zones, elevation changes, technical left-right transitions, and tire management through slow corners all become factors. And standing in Reddick's way was Shane Van Gisbergen, the former Australian Supercars champion who had won 5 of 6 road course races in 2025 and had redefined what dominance on road courses looked like in the Cup Series. Reddick started from pole position. Van Gisbergen started 13th. As the final 20 laps unfolded, Van Gisbergen closed the gap and sat on Reddick's bumper, applying exactly the kind of pressure that forces mistakes. Reddick later said he had to consciously resist the instinct to pull away by too much, knowing that overdriving could burn up his tires and invite Van Gisbergen back into the fight. It is a subtle but critical element of road course racing. The fastest way around the track is not always the fastest way to the finish. Managing tire life, brake temperatures, and fuel consumption over a stint requires a driver to think several laps ahead, not just react to the mirror. Reddick held firm. Then Gisbergen eventually faded over the final 6 laps, and the record was set. 3 races, 3 wins, 3 entirely different tracks. A super speedway, a high-banked intermediate built for drafting, and a technical road course. The versatility required to win at all 3 is extraordinary. In the current next-gen era, where the Cup Series car is built with spec parts purchased from the same suppliers by every team, the engineering margins between organizations are thinner than they have ever been. The car is designed for parity. It is designed to prevent exactly this kind of dominance. That Reddick and 23XI have managed it anyway speaks to something deeper than raw speed. It points to the quality of preparation, the communication between driver and crew chief, and the organizational confidence that comes from a team that has been tested off the track and emerged stronger. Jordan himself drew the parallel that the sports fans were already making. He reminded Reddick before the Austin race that he does things in threes, a nod to his 2 separate runs of 3 consecutive NBA championships with the Chicago Bulls. Reddick now holds a commanding 70-point lead in the early Cup Series standings, a margin that is enormous by the standards of a parity-driven era. Whether that lead can be sustained over the remaining 33 races of the season remains to be seen. Phoenix is next, and the field will adjust. Other teams will study the data, recalibrate their setups, and come hunting. But for now, what 23XI Racing has accomplished stands alone in the record books. A team that fought in federal court for its survival, led by an ownership group that entered the sport just 5 years ago, has opened a season in a way that no team has matched since Petty Enterprises swept the first 3 races of 1963. That was a different sport in a different century, with different cars and different rules. What Reddick, Scott, Hamlin, and Jordan have done belongs entirely to this moment. It is a reminder that in motorsport, the deepest stories are rarely just about the car that crosses the line first. They are about everything that had to happen, everything that almost didn't happen, and everything that was built in silence long before the engines fired.